of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll begin our commission meeting, and welcome, and thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for observing the social distancing and for all the transitions that we're going through during this period of time that we never necessarily projected we would see. We're going to begin our meeting today with an update from the Lakeland Area Mass Transit Authority and Tom Phillips, the Executive Director, who does an unbelievable job of managing not only team but resources so well. And I'll tell you what, those of us who get the privilege to work alongside him are just continually impressed with his effectiveness. We'll be able to give that report. So, Dr. Phillips, that's what I would call you.
Well, thank you. I hope this presentation doesn't disappoint, and I will be as quick as I can forward. There we go. It's right there. My name is Tom Phillips. I'm the Executive Director of the Lakeland Area Mass Transit District, otherwise known as the Citrus Connection. We are the countywide provider of transportation, but this update is obviously a Lakeland-centric presentation, so I'll be speaking just about Lakeland today, and I will be brief. Bringing you up to date on what's happened since the last time we talked. We had our biggest change in 40 years. We called it Reroute 2020, although our fiscal year starts October of 19, but it did take place in 2020, and it was the largest restructuring of the Lakeland-based transit system in its 40-year history. We just celebrated 40 years this year. And what we set about to do with the blessing of the board of directors is we went to the board of directors and said that in 40 years, it's probably time for us to look at the social and economic indicators of Lakeland and how they've changed. We need to change the transportation system to respond to that as well. And so the board of directors said, you can look at how you want to reroute the system, but you have to do three things. The board said, number one, you have to do it within the current budget. Number two, you have to start earlier and run later. And number three, no one can lose a bus stop. If you like your bus stop, you get to keep your bus stop. And they wanted us to stick with that. And so we set, we set about to do that, and we were able to do that. So I'm happy to announce that now the buses in the Lakeland area start as early as 5:45 a.m. and run as late as 8 o'clock at night. That may not sound very early or very late, but we used to run at 6:15 in the morning and stop at 7:15 at night. So that can make a major difference to that first or second shift worker, being able to get to work on time, being able to get home, to be able to provide them with more options, and being able to possibly go home and then go back out again. Something that I think we all take for granted as car users, that we can go home and then go back out. Citrus Connection never really allowed that because we didn't run late enough. Now you may ask, how did we do this within budgeted means? What we did was we look at every single run of our bus like a product on a public shelf, and where those products aren't doing as well, we'll take them off the shelf. So right now, bus frequency in Lakeland is a bus every 30 minutes or a bus every 45 minutes. We improved that from 30-minute service, 60-minute service, 90-minute service, or in some cases 2 hours. So we brought a standardization to the system, but the way that we did that was we slowed the bus system down from 11 o'clock in the morning to 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So the entire system, with the exception of the medical corridor and Florida Avenue, runs at 90-minute frequency during that time, but that allows us to extend the bus service later into the evenings and earlier in the mornings and do it within the same budget necessary. We also now have buses on both sides of the street, so rather than having to wait for a bus and ride it all the way around, you can simply cross the street, catch a bus headed in the opposite direction, and have a much shorter trip in one of your two ways that are there. We also took the opportunity during this to simplify the system. So many of you who've ridden the bus before or have seen our signs, we had the spaghetti monster. We showed every single way that the bus turned left and right, where it went down each of the streets, and Commissioner Madden, I know you're into branding. We knew that most people really didn't care about that. They just wanted to be able to know how I get from my house to where I'm going and how I get home back to or from where I am to my house. And so we simplified that, and on the left-hand side, what you can see is we displayed every single bus route as lineal. So if you're in Chicago, New York, or LA, Commissioner Franklin, I can see you nodding your head, You're on the subway, you know it's turning left, it's turning right, you're going different ways, but they display it in a linear fashion to make it as simple as possible. So we took that opportunity. We went from a number-based system to a colorblind friendly system, so we have the colors, but then we also spell the colors. And every single of the 1,400 bus stops in Polk County now has a unique bus stop number and the bus stop number across the street. We have the national number 321123. You text CC, in this case 2483, on your phone to that national number. It will hit the GPS on the bus and tell you the next time the bus is coming and the 2 buses behind it. So if you miss that bus, it'll tell you the next 2 times as well. And if you happen to be on the wrong side of the street, you can go ahead and find out what time the bus is going to cross on the other way as well. We also have an app that's free of charge to the citizens of Lakeland called MyStop Mobile, where you can sign up to see where all of the buses are. You can also, Commissioner McLeod, sign up, or anyone can sign up and say, I'm at Catapult 2.0 or 3.0. I want to be texted 3 minutes before the bus arrives. Or it's raining outside, I only want to be texted 1 minute before the bus arrives. You can sign up for that, and that's free of charge. You can see how many people are on the bus. Do I have to stand? Can I sit? And those types of things. If it's running late, you're going to get an alert. And then in the unlikely event, hopefully, of a hurricane or other natural disaster, we're able to notify the entire city of Lakeland who signs up for the app. There's a mask ordinance, there's a boil water ordinance, whatever it is, we can push out that information to anyone who has the app or who's texted us. And then very much like the signage at the Tampa International Airport, and I'm sure soon at Lakeland Linder, the first thing you get to the airport is you pick whether you're going blue or red. In this case, that's the new signage on the right-hand side. So rather than talking just about lefts and rights, we have all of the large trip generators that are listed on all of our signs. The other major change since we talked last, and this is the last of the 2 major changes, is obviously the South Florida Avenue Road Diet. We had 14 bus stops in the project area, starting at Cobb and Penn and going all the way to our terminal at 200 North Florida Avenue. We deleted those 14 stops because obviously a 40-foot bus can't stop in one lane of traffic. We'd block traffic for 3 to 5 minutes when boarding a wheelchair passenger, or 90 seconds when boarding an ambulatory passenger. So how do we still provide service to those residents, especially the seniors in that area that still need transit service? We have the Peach Line. These are small buses that are able to run the roads in and around the Dixieland Road Project area without accessing Florida Avenue. And we provide door-to-door service at no charge for anyone that lives within the project area, the ability to hop on and hop off the bus. If they're catching the bus at Public Southgate, Public Southgate, which is on the south side of the project area, because we knew we had to delete the stops before the bottleneck started, or our terminal, it links up there with the regular bus, so someone can get off the Gold Line, which is the Florida Avenue, get on the Peach Line, and we'll get them where they need to go. Or if you're lucky enough to live in the project area or in one of the high-rises, you effectively now have a shuttle that operates from 6:15 in the morning till 7:15 at night that has 30-minute frequent service for free that can link you to downtown, Southgate, or any of the senior high-rise communities. Obviously, COVID's put a big dent in our marketing plans to market this towards the residents that live there, but I can tell you the high-rise communities, and maybe this is something you don't want to hear, but we are socially distancing on the buses, the high-rise communities are using this to go to the grocery store relatively frequently. So right now we're averaging between 8 and 15 people per 30 minutes that are utilizing the Peach Line service. And we'll do this through the project area. This is a 50-50 grant with the Florida Department of Transportation. Should you all permanently approve the road diet, then we will seek that funding permanently from the Florida Department of Transportation. And that is the end of my presentation.
So we really, really appreciate the work that's been done, and that might look like that was a simple task. That was a logistical nightmare to be able to do, and the team that has done it is incredible. Commissioner Walker and Commissioner McCarley and I all sit on that board, so we've gotten to watch that take place. The Peach Line helps us at a time where we really could not have worked on the road diet effectively without having had this correction made first, because otherwise we would have been slowing down the Dixie Land Road Diet with buses that would be stopped, and it would not be the purpose of having it in the first place. So that implementation, the work out front to get it done was very, very important. I know Commissioner McCarley probably has something else to add.
I would echo the same things as the mayor. The staff at Citrus Connection, for the general public who doesn't necessarily get to see the behind the scenes work that goes on, we have staff that are so knowledgeable, and the logistics piece of this transition was huge. And Aaron Dunn, as well as many people, other people on your staff, worked so diligently, and you yourself, Tom. And we just appreciate it, because for our citizens to be able to count on that service from 5:45 in the morning to 8 p.m. at night is just wonderful, and a great opportunity for them to be able to access it. And for the general public, Citrus Connection and Lamb's Head work really hard to service all areas of our county, and they do a really great job in Lakeland. So thank you for all you do.
Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
Any other questions by commissioners or comments? Commissioner McLeod.
Thank you. Tom, for a community like ours, and looking at the future of mass transit, are there trends or things that you would see for Lakeland that you know, in conjunction with this and the changes that have been made as you look out toward the future? I'm just curious kind of what that looks like for communities like Lakeland.
Excellent question. So I think after COVID is over, where we lag a bit is in the first mile, last mile partnerships with the private sector, notably Uber and Lyft. So I think if we can partner with Uber and Lyft and find a way that we can help with the first mile, last mile. So Commissioner McLeod, typically the biggest challenge to getting you or your family out of your personal use vehicle, how do we get you from your house to the closest bus stop? And then once you get off the bus, how do we get you from the stop to work, which is typically a mile or so. So if we can partner with Uber and Lyft, I think that's the next step. Many communities have gone into attempting to do micro-transit with their own employees and their own apps, and I have to say it's been, I believe, an abysmal failure. So it's best to partner with the private sector on that. For that first mile, last mile, I think there's an oversimplification that with Uber and Lyft, public transit and mass transit will go extinct. My sister lives in Chicago, and she's an attorney, and from the time that Uber and Lyft came, she stopped riding the CTA. Because as an attorney living in downtown Chicago, the difference between a $3 CTA card and a $10 or $12 Uber and Lyft each way was a very easy choice for her because of her income level. But working in North Lakeland and having a job in South Lakeland can mean that an Uber or Lyft non-surge pricing is $8 to $12 each way. And if you're earning $15 an hour, Uber and Lyft is an oversimplification. So mass transit still has a place, especially in Polk County where we're the size of Delaware. Even getting from north to south can be a 20 or 30 minute endeavor. But I think first mile, last mile partnerships with the private sector are our next step.
And cost effective on a capitalization basis.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Franklin.
Yeah, Tom, just one other comment. One of the biggest challenges I've heard for a long time is folks just talking about just the simplicity, or just overcomplicated, and the things you guys have done to simplify this. I know it's a monumental task on your part and the staff's, but this is going to really go a long way, I think, to driving up that ridership when people have a simpler system to understand and they know it's more predictable. So I really appreciate that.
Thank you, sir. Thank you all very much. Yes.
Commissioner Madden.
I was talking to some folks who were on the Leadership Lakeland committee a couple of weeks ago, and just mentioning how when I went through Leadership Lakeland in 2005, one of the things that we did as an activity is they gave us, were dropped off in Munn Park with cash and had to get somewhere and go and, get to the bus station and figure out how to get there. And I felt like it was such a great experience, and it would be nice if you wanted to do something and use us as guinea pigs, or get some people throughout Lakeland to try out the new system when COVID's not as here. I think that would be kind of a fun thing to augment your PR campaign. So
we would absolutely welcome that opportunity. I know when the LEDC invited the IDEO Corp to come in and live and work in Lakeland and give their report, I believe half went on a B-Fly bike tour and the other rode transit. And so I think when we can get the thought leaders of the community to try transit and set that example, it really does help the larger community.
Mr. Phillips, you might want to make a comment too, because I know in the social media, some people don't understand some of the pressures on drivers right now on routes and availability, to the extent that you can kind of wrap that into a summary.
Yes, so obviously COVID impacts everyone, including first responders, and our drivers really truly are first responders in Lakeland. Not in the sense that they're saving lives, but in the sense that we are vital to the economic and healthcare communities. 17.7% of our population's at or below the poverty line in Polk County. 66% of the families in Polk County can't handle a $1,000 crisis. 44% can't handle a $400 crisis. And so having quality access to mass transit is a way that people are able to get to and from work, but also access health care. And many of our seniors are able to take care of themselves in their home, but it's getting to the doctor's appointment, getting to the grocery store, those things once they cross the threshold of their home that are a challenge to aging in place. And so the Citrus Connection is able to do that. So we have had to curtail services. Right now we've decreased service by approximately 30%, not because of COVID positive cases at the organization. We have had a few, but nowhere near 30%. But because people are nervous coming to work, and that means that they're distracted driving. And so we have made it optional for individuals to use their accrued sick and vacation time if they're not comfortable to work right now. And approximately 20% of our workforce is taking us up on that. So we are providing limited service, but we're making sure that we're covering the employment centers and the medical corridors during this time. And we ask that you bear with us as we make those changes as necessary. But our goal is to provide as much service for as long as we possibly can, given the outbreak.
Any other questions at all? Thank you very, very much for your presentation and your great work. We really appreciate it. Our next presentation will be from Commander John Hillary from the Military Order of the Purple Heart.
Good evening.
Great to have you join us, sir.
This is a memorial ceremony. At this time, I'd like to have the Chief of Police come forward and Mrs. Foley come forward. You'll accept down pay. You can stand there. Patriot Hellman and Patriot Dennis. Y'all come forward. We're going to be presenting both plaques to the Chief of Police. Okay. So, Mr. Mayor, City Commissioners, Chief of Police, fellow patriots, ladies and gentlemen, we are here assembled in sincere and heartfelt affections and deep sympathy of loss to honor those that have served and suffered in our community. We have now departed this life. Not in boasting, but as an expression of our sympathy and pacific responsibility, and this somber occasion do we come together. The Military Order of the Purple Heart is the tie that binds those sacrifices given by these men and fully understand as to what these sacrifices really, truly mean. May these plaques allow us to always remember them and the sacrifices that they gave to our community. The Military Order of the Purple Heart, Chapter 535 here in Lakeland, Florida, presents these plaques to tribute and pay respect to the following people. The honoring memory of Officer Kenneth Foley, December the 4th, the year 2019, for making the ultimate sacrifice while serving the citizens of Lakeland, Florida, and the state of Florida. That's it, that's all.
We have two retired police officers, and we go to the Military Order of the Purple Heart. We do this in tribute to the fallen officer named Thank you.
And honoring the memory of Officer Paul Dunn.
In tribute,
June the 9th, year 2020, for making the ultimate sacrifice while serving the citizens of this community and the state of Florida. May it always remind us of the sacrifices to our community and provide some closure for the community and their loved ones. Thank you very much.
Three, two, one. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very, very much for coming in for those presentations. The next thing we're going to do is I'm going to read a proclamation because this is Lakes Appreciation Month. And, oh, there she is. Okay, so Lori, please come on up. I didn't see you there. This is Lori Smith, who's president of Lakes Education and Action Drive and the manager of our Lakes and Stormwater Division. And Danny Cooper, who is our executive director of Lakes Education
Mayor, you need your mic.
and Education Drive. I forgot. Too many things to balance. All right, so. Does that work? All right.
Thank you.
The city of Lakeland is blessed with many lakes and ponds within its boundaries. Lakes and ponds are important resources to the city's way of life and its environment, providing sources of recreation, scenic beauty, and habitat for wildlife. Lakes are a valuable economic resource for businesses, tourism, and municipal governments, and many citizen and volunteers have actively demonstrated their intense interest in lakes over the years, and the City of Lakeland recognizes the need to protect our lakes and our ponds for future generations. And lakes are far more than just beautiful places for the birds to flock and for us to enjoy visually for sunset pictures. They're far more than just a place that starts to begin the process of filtering water that goes back into the aquifer. And so as a result of that, having the investment of a team of people who protect our lakes is so important to us. And that's why we are giving this proclamation for Lakes Appreciation Month in July to the two of you. There you go. Comments?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We certainly do appreciate the proclamation. July is Lakes Appreciation Month, as the mayor said, and it is a time for all of us to come together and recognize what valuable resources our lakes truly are. And it is our mission as manager of Lakes and Stormwater Division for the city, and also in cooperations with Lakes Education Action Drive. It is our mission to educate our citizens and bring about change.
Well, thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Lori. Lori is the president of the Lakes Education Action Drive, which is a nonprofit organization that started in 1985, and basically to educate our local residents and visitors that Polk County has some beautiful lakes, some 550, and we need to protect them, and we need to make sure we do the right thing, and what you do in your yard can affect the lake down the road. My first Lakes Appreciation Proclamation acceptance was 13 years ago in this office, in this room. So thank you. The City of Lakeland is very much vital and part of keeping our lakes clean. So thank you.
Thanks very much. And then we'll do a quick picture. Thanks so much. Appreciate you being here. All right, that brings us to our committee reports and related items, and the first one is from our Real Estate and Transportation Committee, and Commissioner Reed chairs that committee, so he will take it from here.
Thank you, Mayor. Bear with me, we had a short meeting, but we covered quite a bit of items here. So the Real Estate and Transportation Committee met on the go-to meeting. Commissioner Bill Reed, chairman, Commissioner Franklin and Walker were present, along with Mayor Muntz and Commissioner Sherry McCauley and Chad McLeod. Bill Reed called the meeting together at 8:15 on July the 2nd. The first modification of a lease with Tom Evans Environmental. Tom Evans Environmental occupies 4,332 feet. The office in Giroux office facility at 3200 Flightline Drive. Tom Evans sought to extend their term of their lease and modify the base rent. Upon the City Commission's approval, this first modification will be initial term of 2 years, retroactive from July 1, 2020, containing 2 additional 1-year option renewals. Base rent for the initial 2-term year will be $4,032 per month or $48,384 annually. In addition to the applicable taxes, Tom Evans will also be responsible for $600 a month for the utility costs. This represents his reported share of the entire facility. Base rent during the first renewal period will be $50,400 plus applicable taxes. The base rent would remain unchanged in the second renewal period. The Real Estate and Transportation Committee recommends the City Commission to approve the first modification of lease with Tom Evans and authorize the appropriate city officials to finalize and execute an agreement consisting with the above terms. Commissioner Walker moved to approve the modification. Commissioner Franklin seconded. The motion carried unanimously. The second order of business was an acquisition redevelopment agreement with First LLC for the sale and development of 313 and 321 North Massachusetts Avenue. The Community Redevelopment Agency, the CRA, owns 313 and 321 North Massachusetts Avenue. The site was situated, recently identified as a key catalyst to the site of downtown Lakeland Vision. The property is bounded on the north by Oak Street and property housing the Greyhound bus station to the south and a single multifamily development to the east. The CRA purchased the property in 2006 for $560,000. Demolition destruction of the property, the combined demolition, abatement, and purchase costs were approximately $700,000. On March of 2019, the city issued a notice for disposition. The sole proposal received was from First One LLC. First One owned the property adjacent to the CR property, as well as the entire block north of Oak Street, left city right-of-way. First One was actively pursuing the Greyhound property to the south for inclusion into their development. On May 20th, 2019, the City Commission and the Community Redevelopment Agency unanimously granted the city and the CRA permission to begin negotiation on the terms of development agreement with First One, which would be brought back to the Commission for final approval. Overall, the project would add 156,900 square feet of mixed-use space with an estimated tax value of over $25 million to the Massachusetts Avenue corridor. The Real Estate Transportation Committee recommended that the City Commission enter into a development agreement with First One and authorize the appropriate CRA officials to execute the agreement. Elise Drumbo came to the presentation. The project will improve connectivity between the Summit site, up the Uptown Bypass, and complement the Mirrortown development. Phase 1 will be 29,000 square feet with the combining of office space and residential. Phase 2 would be the Greyhound bus site. Phase 3 would be the doubling of both phases 1 and 2 to add additional 95,000 square feet of additional use for a target to include a small grocery store in the downtown area. The master project would be 156,000 square feet from Bay Street to Peachtree along Massachusetts Avenue. This would be a 4 to 5 story building with mixed-use development and would bring a project general revenue of $225,000 tax revenue. To highlight the development order or the sale, there is a 10,000 square feet deviation possible, a $200,000 purchase price for the CRA property, $10,000 deposit to apply towards the purchase price, a 90-day due diligence with a 30-day extension. The closing conditions are proof of financial commitment, permitted in hand, acquired the Greyhound bus station. Closing will occur 30 days after the meeting of these conditions, but will not be more than not be after 12 months thereafter. 3 extensions are built into the closing period at no cost to First One. There would be no transfer of property unless all conditions are met. There will be a 50% TIF. For those in the audience and out in the watching on TV, TIF is a tax increment financing mechanism for 5 years based on phase 1 completed within 18 months of closing. There'll be a 5-year TIF extension if the master project completed within 36 months of the COO. Again, COO stands for Certificate of Occupancy for phase 1. Phase 2 and phase 3 are eligible for 50% TIF over 5 years, provided the terms do not extend beyond the life of the downtown CRA. The CRA will contribute $144,000 in incentives to the developer. First One will have access to 50 or 4% of the spaces in the garage at the Lakeland Police Department, provided the master project will be completed. And last, the project may accommodate up to 120 additional residential units depending on the market. Commissioner Franklin moved to approve the development agreement. Commissioner Walker second, and the motion carried unanimously. Our meeting adjourned at 8:33 a.m. July 2nd. Commissioners, the floor is yours. Mayor, excuse me.
Would you want to consider these individually or together? And if so, we need a motion, whoever has an opinion on that.
I make a motion, we put them together.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
All right. Then a discussion by commissioners. Elise, would you like to comment on the second one at all, on anything to round it out? This is Elise Drumgo, our Community Redevelopment Agency Executive Director, who does a superb job.
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon, everyone. I just want to thank you all. The commissioner, he covered all the highlights. I was prepared to give a presentation in case any of you wanted to see it individually, but we thank you. We're excited about the project. It'll certainly fill a gap in that north portion of downtown. It's very complementary to the Muriton development that is taking place to the east of the subject site, and so we're just excited to go back and work with the developer to get this one in the ground.
Mr. Mayor.
Commissioner Franklin, and yes, sir.
Do you have your slides with you?
Yes, sir, I do.
For those in the public who may not be familiar,
That's a great
there's some
idea.
nice renderings, and I know Chad had a question.
Sure.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I had a few follow-up questions, but he may answer them during the presentation. So.
Okay. All right. Just make sure we're covering that. So as the commissioner mentioned, the subject site is just to the north of the old Greyhound Station, north of Bay Street. The CRA has owned this property since 2006, and we've invested well over $1 million in it with demolition, the acquisition, and the carrying costs over the last 14, almost 15 years. So we've been working on this development agreement now for about a year or so. And again, the proposed development will significantly increase that connectivity to our downtown. As you see that development of the Summit site right around Lake Mirror, we'll get some development north of Bay Street heading up to the bypass with this particular project. Again, you can see Muriton there in the top portion of the screen in the background there. So this particular project is complementary of that because it actually provides that mixed use along Massachusetts Avenue, whereas the Muriton development is primarily residential. So with that 305 units of Muriton, now we get this quality development along Massachusetts Avenue that's about 150,000 square feet, and it may include an additional 120 units. And just taking you through the phases here, approximately 29,000 square feet. This is specifically on the CRA-held property. That second phase would be on the Greyhound site. The developer does have an agreement in place to acquire that property. There is some additional remediation that does need to take place on the site, so the developer will complete that process. And then with the third phase of development, it covers the entire block. So this is between Oak, Peachtree, North Iowa, and then Massachusetts Avenue to the west. And this third phase is approximately 95,000 square feet. So in total, you see there with the site, about 156,000 square feet. There is a 10% deviation just in case the developer has to less out any space for any reason. We wanted to provide that flexibility. The developer also has the flexibility to have any amount of commercial, retail, or residential use within the development. And as the commissioner mentioned, there's the purchase price, $200,000. That is the assessed value of the property. There's a $10,000 deposit. We've got the extensions that are built into the due diligence and the development agreement itself. So we're looking at the earliest, we could have a shoveling ground in November, provided that all the conditions are met, which are the contract in hand, the financial commitment, and that agreement with the contractor. And then with the TIF agreement, we're looking at a 5-year standard TIF at 50%. The developer does have the option to capture additional TIF on phases 2 and 3 of the project. So we're trying to incentivize the developer to get it all done by offering an extension of an additional 5 years of TIF on the first phase of development, should they complete it all within 36 months of occupying the first phase. So we're really trying to push them to get it done. And then the developer also has the option, wants to retain an option to obtain 4% of the parking spaces should we build the parking garage on the LPD site, or 50 spaces, whichever is less. And they do understand that there's no guarantee that that garage will ever be built, just retaining that option.
And at market rate.
Yes. So again, we're excited about this thing, and we're just we're seeking that approval to go forward here.
Commissioner McLeod.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Elise, I was trying to get a sense of how much residential would be in the project, and I think if I read it correctly, it's about 50,000 square feet total over the 3 phases. Do you know, just to get a visual sense of how many units that might be, or what that could look like?
Sure. So across the 3 phases, there's a total of 123 units. So approximately 120 units. I would say the bulk of those are in the 3rd phase.
Commissioner Reed.
Liz, could you point out where you think the grocery might go?
Sure. So in the renderings, I'll take you back. If you see there where it says bodega there, this is the corner of, I believe this is Peachtree. Is that right, Jim? Yeah. Oak Street. Yeah, that's right. So this is Oak Street. And so it would be to the north of, just to the north of Oak Street, and sit on that corner. The developer rendered this out and would like to include a grocer to serve downtown. We don't expect it to be massive, right? That's a small footprint, but we do recognize that there's a need for it in the downtown.
And if you could go to the other slide that kind of shows where that is. And bodega is our word of the day, or at least it was mine. Yes.
Yes.
So it's right in phase 3, on the corner between the 2 streets. That's Oak Street.
Yep.
Between phase 3 and phase 1. It's on the left side of the face of phase 1.
Right here.
Right there. Thank you.
Sure. I'll take any other questions.
Any other questions? All right, any questions from the public or comments? All right, this is a voice vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same. Unanimously passes. Thank you very much. That brings us to the consent agenda.
Mayor, move to approve the consent agenda. I'm used to raising my hand, sorry, on Zoom.
And a second from Commissioner Franklin. All right. Any discussion from commissioners? Those are the asterisk items on our agenda. Any discussion by the public or questions? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Unanimously passes. That brings us to the approval of the minute, to the equalization hearing. And so we will cease meeting as a commission and move into an equalization board. And if we could hear from our city attorney on A, lots cleaning and clearing.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Notice is hereby given that assessments have been entered against the lots and parcels of land in the city of Lakeland, Florida, as shown on the today's agenda, as provided by Chapter 86 of the Code of the City of Lakeland, Florida. Said assessments being payable within 30 days with interest at the rate of 8% per annum as hereinafter specifically set forth. If there's anyone in the audience that received a notice from the city that the city was going to consider imposing a charge against their property because of the city or their contractor cutting their property, mowing their property, or cleaning their property, now's the time for you, this is an opportunity for you to address the city commission and express any objections you might have to that, or ask any questions that you might have.
So are there any individuals in the audience that have an objection or want to speak on their property? Yes, sir. If you could just come up to this podium right here in the middle, state your name, and then let us know what your objection is.
My name is Keith Robinson. My objection is that
The address on this, Mr. Robinson, is which?
1226 Honey Tree Lane East.
Okay.
This code enforcement officer had been at this property and gone past this property numerous times. And all of a sudden, I'm receiving this notification, and then my neighbor and I were cutting each other's grass back and forth. So I thought my neighbor had cut it, and then I got assessed by the city that they had cut it and cleared it. Well, this was a little alarming to me, 'cause, all of a sudden, and the fee that was assessed, because I've got a picture of the property. Can anybody take a look at that? You want to take a look at it, or somebody?
Actually,
Attorney?
if you hand that to our clerk, she'll put it up on the screen. Thank you.
Made it so the red dots, right?
My understanding is that the code enforcement has to do all their observations from the street. You can see that property's on a cul-de-sac, and there's a 6-foot chain link fence on both sides of the property. But the yellow X is where the house is. So there's really no possible way for them to check into that backyard unless they trespass on the neighbor's side, on the right-hand side. You really can't see through on the left-hand side, neighbor's side, because there's trees and all that there. My other objection to that is first of all, the cleaning was very sporadic. I had concrete blocks that I was going to use for a barbecue pit and some rebar. That stuff was removed, and I'd like to know if there is a list of the materials that were removed from that property. Over on the right-hand or left-hand side, there's a little distance between the house and the chain link fence, and there's a gate there. Well, this is the kind of chain, a security lock that was on that gate. That gate was dismantled so that no one could go through this. Taken off, it hasn't been put back properly yet. So somebody else could access that property and steal things. I've already had stuff stolen off that property. I was wondering if the city is able to trespass on a private citizen's property. And did the city cut that grass, or was there a third party that cut it?
What I would recommend the city commission do is simply remove this particular property from the roll for today's hearing and let staff look into the specifics of this case, and then either dismiss the charges or bring it back to the city commission for further action at a subsequent meeting. I don't think it's really possible for us to look at the facts in detail at this hearing.
Satisfactory with you, Mr. Robinson?
Sure, will I have to come back here then?
We might be able to handle this before you leave. I'm not sure if Mr. Denny is here or not.
But how, I mean, is there a trespass type of situation involved here?
Yeah, let us look at the facts and see
Okay.
what they are, and then we'll go from there.
So we may be able to get that done before you leave.
Okay.
And he's oftentimes listening, so if he's in the building, he'll probably.
All right. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And appreciate you bringing that in.
Okay.
Are there any other members of the audience that have an objection to any of the equalization listings? Commissioner Reed.
Again, I see this has got a 330-day cut, a $330,000 cutting cost. Aren't those normally $80? Is this exceptional, or would it cut multiple times?
That's in line with the charge. I mean, I see there's a significant administrative charge with this. And it sounds like there was the cleaning of, not just cutting, but also cleaning
Not a big
debris off the
extra
property.
cleaning,
So
yeah.
that adds up. There's tipping fees at the landfill for, disposing of material, that type of thing.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions by commissioners? And no other comments from the audience? So is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Do we need to exclude this one for now?
Yeah, with the exclusion of Ms. Robinson's. And a second to that effect? From Commissioner Franklin. This is a voice vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Unanimously passes. That ceases our meeting as an equalization board, and we convene as a commission, and public hearings, ordinances, second reading are none, and that takes us to B, miscellaneous 1.
And we do have a public hearing scheduled for today for the city commission to consider the city's one-year action plan and projected use of funds for the 46th year of the Community Development Block Grant Program and 26th year of the Home Investment Partnerships Program. I believe Andy Gibson with our Housing Division will be presenting to you on this.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Hope you guys can hear me.
Yes, ma'am.
So today, Andy Gibson, Housing Program Supervisor, Community and Economic Development, Planning and Housing Division. This is a public hearing for Community Development Block Grant, CDBG, and Home Investment Partnership Home, one-year action plan and projected use of funds. The city is an entitlement community, which means it is allocated funds from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, based on its population and number of low-income persons. Each entitlement is required to submit a 5-year consolidated plan. The city's plan was done in 2015 for 2015 to 2020. Each year, local entitlements have to submit a projected use of funds or action plan to HUD to outline the use of funds. Thus far, there have been 2 public meetings, one on May 21st with the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee, the second on June the 18th, a public meeting at the Dream Center. Today is the first of the public hearings. A second will be August the 3rd. The plan is currently posted on the city's website for public review and comment for 30 days. The program year begins on October 1st and ends on September 30th. The action plan must be filed with HUD by August 15th of 2020. CDBG are federal funds which was first offered in 1975 and administered, of course, by HUD. The city utilizes funds for owner-occupied rehab, code enforcement, public services, which right now includes rental assistance and mortgage foreclosure prevention. With the most current health crises of the COVID-19, housing is taking up the challenge of rental assistance called Lakeland Care. We've been able to ask HUD for various waivers and reallocate funds from rehab to rental and utility assistance. There's a 20% cap for administration and a 15% cap for public services. So each one of the grants have things you can't do and can do. So some of the things that are ineligible for CDBG are acquisition, construction, and reconstruction of buildings for general conduct of government, political activities, and certain income payments for CDBG. Home Investment Partnership. Home was created in 1990 and the funds were made available in 1992. Our local funds are used for owner-occupied rehab, home purchase assistance, rental construction, and CHODO, Community Housing Development Organization. There's a 10% cap for administration and a 15% minimal cap for CHODO. With the down payment and closing costs, we're allocated funds according to income limits. For moderate income, which can only be used for SHIP funds, is $7,000 down payment, $3,000 closing costs. For low income is $12,000 plus $3,000 closing costs. For very low and extremely low is $20,000 plus $3,000 closing costs. Some things you can't do at home are tenant-based rental assistance for special purposes of existing Section 8 programs, provide non-federal matching contribution, pay for acquisition of property owned by participating jurisdictions. For 1920, the 45th year for CDBG, we received $935,000. The 25th year of home, we received $362,000. We estimate closed program income each year. CDBG is $2,500, home was $5,000. Carryover for CDBG was $600,000 for a budget of $1.9 million. The city may allocate up to 15% of its entitlement for public services. Shown is the list of the public services for 1920. The total amount allocated was $146,000. Now, in addition to those, there were 11 nonprofit agencies that received funds from general fund totaling $100,000. Here is just a review of some of the agencies who received funds from CDBG and from the general fund over the period of this year. During the calendar year of 2019, there were 28 homes and 54 persons assisted through the rehab program, which included major rehab, emergency repair, quick fix, and reconstruction. With the home purchase assistance, there were 11 units and 32 persons assisted. Of those 11, there were 2 homes that were assisted with the CRA funding. Since consolidating the CRA and housing programs, there have been 10 minor rehabs done in 2020 using CRA funds. Those numbers will show up in the 2020 totals. This is an example of a new construction on an owner-occupied rehab program where the house was in such disrepair that we had to rebuild. And this was a special needs mother and daughter. The city partnered with United Methodist Church, Elder Point, Catholic Charities, and assisted when helping the family found a place to stay during the reconstruction. They also helped with the donation of furniture. And I spoke to the daughter on last week, and she mentioned the most important thing about her home is the air conditioning.
Amen.
Here's an example of a major rehab with CRA and CDBG funds. CRA funds are mainly used for the exterior of the home. Here's another picture of the exterior. Here's a picture of the interior. Due to the COVID-19, the city was allocated an additional $575,000 of CDBG. On April the 27th, the City Commission, you guys, approved a substantial amendment to the 2019-2020 action plan. To assist families and persons, the city reallocated $350,000 of CDBG funds, allocated $375,000 of covert funds, and allocated SHIP funds of $180,000. Housing anticipates assisting 200 to 300 clients. The maximum award is $5,000 or 3 months. You still must fall within the income guidelines. To date, we have expended $245,000 of CDBG and SHIP funds. We also were able to award several public service agencies: Lakeland Volunteer Medicine, Peace River Center, and Talbot House. We're also able to provide a mortgage foreclosure prevention program through the Keystone Challenge program for $50,000. Since 1978 for CDBG and 1991 for home and SHIP, there have been 1,185 home owners assisted through the rehab program, 898 home buyers through the home purchase assistance and CHOTO program. The Housing Division participates with the homeless providers with the Continuum of Care application. The Continuum of Care grant brings in approximately $1.2 million into the Polk County area. The city contributes to other affordable housing projects and programs with federal, state, and local funds. The city reimburse and/or waive impact fees to builders such as Keystone Challenge, Lakeland Habitat, and other multifamily developers. The infill vacant lot program, which we brought to you guys in March, there was an RFP issued from March 23rd to April 6th. Housing Division received 30 applications from various contractors and developers, and then the COVID virus showed up. Staff has since ranked and evaluated those developers, and now in the progress of matching the lots with those developers to be reviewed by a review team. To review the projected CDBG and home funds for 2021, funds are requested from the Affordable Housing Program, as also from other city departments and nonprofits. For the 4-6 year of CDBG, HUD has awarded $977,000. For the 26-year home, $393,000. We do estimate carryover CDBG for $200,000. Program income for CDBG, $2,500. Program income for home, $100,000, for a budget of $1.6 million. Funds requested for CDBG and home includes $189,000 for administration, $56,000 for code enforcement, $1.2 million for affordable housing programs. Our water department has also put in a request to do a study in the Robson area, which is a low-income area, to convert that area, which includes 564 parcels, from septic to city sewer system. The city has allocated $50,000 for that study, along with the CRA, bringing that total to $100,000. The Planning and Housing Division issued a request for proposal for nonprofit agencies on February 10, 2020. We received 30 applications for a total of $700,000 worth of requests. Listed, you will see those agencies that were awarded CDBG funds. Later on, in the meeting today, there are 11 other nonprofit agencies that are applied and we're recommending for general fund of $100,000. That budget, those agencies will be submitted to the finance department for the 2020 city budget, 2021 city's budget. As mentioned, this year allocation for CDBG is $977,393 for home. This chart represents CDBG home and SHIP, State Housing Initiative Program, levels from 2003 to present. CDBG has fluctuated over the years. We increased this year by 42,000. Home increased by 1,000. SHIP varies from year to year. The governor did veto those funds for SHIP program, which the city was due to receive $1 million. The veto of SHIP funds, we're hoping, means that they will remain in the local government trust fund. And we're hoping that the governor in the legislation during the special session, which is anticipated in the fall, will reevaluate those SHIP funds and appropriate them then. He did allocate CARE funds to local governments for rental and utilities. At this time, I don't know how those funds are going to be dispersed, so we're just waiting to hear. A note for fair housing. The City of Lakeland Community Planning and Housing Division does business in accordance with the federal fair housing law, which prohibits discrimination against any person because of race, color, religion, sex, handicap, familial status, or national origin. Anyone who feels they have been discriminated against may file a complaint. The form which is located on our website. For the 2020 action plan and projected use of funds for CDBG and home, the Planning and Housing Division has conducted public meetings, published notice in the local newspaper, posted information on the city's website. Today is the first of 2 public hearings. No action is required today. HUD will require the commission to approval to submit the plan on August the 3rd. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Questions from commissioners? Thank you very much, Commissioner McCarley.
Thank you, Ms. Gibson. We really appreciate you doing all this hard work. I had just two questions, and they might be novice questions that you've covered before, so forgive me. But you mentioned carryover funds of $600,000 early in the presentation.
Yes.
What did you mean by carryover?
So, probably 2008, 2010, there were some NSP neighborhood stabilization money that we received because of the foreclosures and stuff along those lines. When we were not able to, when the program ended, we had about $200,000 to $300,000 remaining. So those funds were able to be converted to be used for CDBG eligible activities. Also, when we do not spend all of the CDBG money, it rolls over for usage for the next year.
Okay, so it doesn't have to go back to the federal government?
No, sir. No, ma'am. Unless we are out of compliance if on August the 3rd, we have 1.5 amount of the current allocation on the books.
Okay.
And then we are out of compliance with HUD.
Thank you. And could you forward the slides to me or to us?
Yes.
The commissioners? Thank you. It was very helpful. Thank you.
The CARES money for rental and utilities that is undisclosed in terms of how you can use it yet does have to be used by 12/31, doesn't it?
Yes, sir, it does.
Is that part of the pressure that you're feeling?
Well, we do not know as of right now if the city would get any of those funds. I mean, we're hoping that they would allocate them according to the entitlement communities that SHIP would, but we don't know as of right now.
Other questions from commissioners? Any questions by the audience at all? Thank you very, very much for your presentation. And your second hearing, or your second presentation on this will be when?
On August 3rd.
Okay. Very good. That then takes us to the city manager. And sitting in for that role will be Deputy City Manager Charles.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good afternoon, Commissioners. It's my pleasure to be here with you today. As you know, our city manager is off and enjoying some well-deserved vacation time. I have 4 items for presentation, starting with the first item, which is regarding a reimbursable agreement with the Federal Aviation Administration supporting the upgrade of the instrument landing system at Lakeland Linder International Airport to a Category 3 designation. The Florida Department of Transportation issued a multi-year grant in June 2019 to upgrade the Runway 9 instrument landing system and runway visual range from a Category 2 to a Category 3 designation with an 80% participation of the project cost, with funds to be provided through 2024. So the grant includes 80% funding by FDOT and 20% funding from the city. Lakeland Linder International Airport is in receipt of the Federal Aviation Administration's reimbursable agreement to provide engineering, design, review, and construction oversight for our airport's efforts to establish an approach lighting system with flashers to support Category 2 and Category 3 capabilities on Runway 9. This effort includes the sponsor, which is the city's installation of the system and the removal of the existing medium intensity approach lighting system, as well as the relocation of the Runway 9 glide slope and precision approach path indicator. The estimated cost for FAA services is $1,048,222, which is required to be prepaid in full at the time of execution of the agreement. This is a critical component of upgrading to the Category 3 system and is eligible for reimbursement under the FDOT grant agreement, again, at 80% funding. It is recommended that the City Commission authorize the appropriate city officials to enter into the reimbursable agreement with the FAA in the amount of $1,048,222.48 and to remit payment to the FAA for the contracted amount. There are no appropriations needed for this item. And again, Commissioners, this is the city utilizing the FDOT grant to pay the FAA for their engineering, design review, and construction oversight. That completes my presentation of the item, and we do have Gene Conrad with us if we have any technical questions for Mr. Conrad.
Are there any questions by commissioners? Yes, Commissioner McLeod.
Just a basic question, and we may have covered this. Can you tell me the difference between Category 2 and Category 3 again? That may need to go to Commissioner Franklin, but just for those of us outside the aviation community.
You could land in much worse weather.
Good afternoon, Gene Conrad, Airport Director. Great question. So we just finished the Cat 2 upgrade, Special Authorization Cat 2, and that was installed and ready to go and usable for June 1st. And essentially what that was an upgrade to our glide slope and to our localizer antennas. So 2 systems we already had on the airport for our Cat 1, and then we're going to a Cat 2, but it upgraded the glide slope and the localizer. The Cat 3 specifically is for the visual elements. So the glide slope's already upgraded, the localizer's already upgraded. And if you recall, with the runway, we put in the touchdown zone lighting and the center line lights. So that infrastructure is in place, so we'll come back with the Cat 3. We'll put all the wiring and all the fixtures, all the lighting fixtures. And then the ALSUP 2, which specifically is talked about here, is the new approach lighting system. So you'll have basically a massive Christmas tree coming into the runway. So that's really what the Cat 3 does, is the visual elements to get you lower and basically land in 0-0 visibility.
That's good. Thank you.
Commissioner Franklin, can you describe what a glide scope does?
Well, the glide slope is just the angle of your attack, of your.
So how does that work?
And the localizer is the center line of the runway, so it shoots a beam out to the aircraft, and so you can line up on the center line of the runway. And the glide slope brings you in a 3-degree angle down to the runway.
Thank you.
Yep.
And the nice thing about these lights is even if you're not doing an ILS approach, even if it's GPS or any kind of thing like that, it's just such a better lighting system coming in. It'll help aircraft get oriented to the landing area. There's a lot of conditions you have to be able to meet in order to proceed below your decision heights on those approaches, and it'll really.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Commissioner, even if you're only authorized for just a Cat 1, for example, if you can make out the airport and see it, you can land. So those lights, if you can see it.
There's a laundry list of items you have to be able to say, you know, you've got the center line lights, you've got the approach in, all those different things, and it really helps you pick up that. And when you're shooting an approach into minimums, it's you may only have a couple of seconds really to be able to make out that area and make that decision. If you don't have those criteria met, you're obligated. My mask keeps riding down. You're obligated to do a missed approach. So it just helps you get orienting faster, and it'll increase the number of times that people can land safely without having to do a missed approach.
And if he adds an aircraft carrier deck going like this to it, that makes that even more minimum.
We don't move.
Yeah, at least we're a fixed place to land, which is very exciting. Any other questions? Oh, it's very interesting though, and it's a practical question that I think a lot of people would want to know. Why do you need to do this? And is it just money that's not spent wisely? But this makes the reason is for everybody else around. You want the planes to land, and there's nothing better than this available. So pretty exciting.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, so that brings us to item B, sir.
We need a motion.
Move to approve.
Oh, I'm sorry, this is a vote. I apologize. A motion to approve and a second. I apologize. And commissioners, any comments? Audience, any comments? Voice vote. All those in favor signify. Whoops.
Just really quick.
Commissioner
This is
McCarthy.
maybe to Commissioner Franklin. Doesn't this give us the opportunity too for other planes to come from other areas if they need to, because it's a safer landing site, so that it could increase our numbers of planes that come in and out of Lakeland Linder?
It could, and Gene's, I'm sure he's going to address
Sorry.
that in another item we have too that's going to make us a more attractive place to come even after hours if.
It really depends, you know, in the future when we do have commercial service, when we're past all this COVID stuff and we get back on the right track. For example, if we had American or Delta or whomever in here and there were diversions, if they couldn't get into Tampa or St. Pete or somewhere else, they could come into here because we'd have the system, and maybe some other airports don't. So there's only a handful, maybe 60 airports in the entire United States who would have this system. And just one more tidbit of information as well. What's important too with this reimbursable and why we're paying the FAA is this is going to be their system. So we're buying it and we're installing everything, but they're going to maintain it for us, which we haven't really talked about, by the way, in the past, but it is very difficult to get the FAA to come in and maintain these systems because they're not installing them around the country really anymore, except maybe at Chicago or Atlanta or something like that. So an airport like ours, for them to make that commitment to come in and maintain it in perpetuity, that's a big deal. So that's why, you know, this is an important agreement, because it has to be to their standard if they're going to maintain it.
Thank you.
Excellent. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same. Unanimously passes. Excellent. Item B, sir.
The second item, also related to the airport, is a professional services contract with Robinson Aviation to provide air traffic controller services from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. at Lakeland Linder International Airport. The Category 2 ILS system requires that the air traffic control tower be manned when the system is available to be used. To meet this requirement, Lakeland Linder International Airport will be initiating a 24-hour, 7 days a week manned tower operation beginning on August 1st, 2020. The airport is obligated to cover the cost for the tower coverage from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., while the Federal Aviation Administration continues to pay for the current tower coverage from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. Robinson Aviation is the current contracted tower provider with the FAA, and the airport has negotiated with Robinson to also provide the controller services for the 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. extended coverage period. Now, because Robinson is the current provider, for continuity's sake and safety purposes, it's best to have them then cover these extended hours, and this is the reason why this particular item is a sole source authorization. The contract is for a 1-year period from August 1st, 2020 through July 31st, 2021. Upon mutual written agreement of both parties, this agreement may be extended for 3 additional 1-year periods, and if this agreement is extended, each additional 1-year period is subject to increases. Under the proposed contract agreement, the cost to provide the controller services for the first contract year is $258,995.68 and will include the airport being responsible for a one-time charge of $7,643.68 for training costs for the new controllers. Also, the airport will remit a monthly fee of $19,109 to cover the controller cost for the 10 p.m. through 6 a.m. extended hours. The airport will also be required to reimburse Robinson for its additional increased cost of $22,044 on their aviation operations liability insurance premium due to the increased hours of operations. These costs have already been included in the airport's 2020 and 21 budgets. It's recommended that the City Commission authorize the appropriate city officials to enter into the contract with Robinson Aviation to provide the air traffic controller services for the extended hours of 10 p.m. through 6 a.m. 7 days a week, and that would be in the amount of $258,995.68, and no appropriations are needed for this item. And in relation to the last item, this would be needed even when we have fully implemented the Cat 3 system. So we would need to have these controller services even when that Cat 3 is fully implemented out at the airport. That completes my presentation, and again, Mr. Conrad is here for any questions.
Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Commissioner Reader and Commissioner McLeod. And discussion by commissioners or questions? Commissioner Franklin?
Yeah,
Oh, I'm sorry.
Gene, we had the conversation Friday. I thought that was noteworthy, though, that our goal is to get this picked up by the government as soon as we can. And then when we get the certain number of operations, you said it was 4 or 6 per hour?
It was 4 per hour.
And that's on an average?
Yes, sir, and I don't know if, I believe it's per hour, so I'll have to go back and check. But I did look at our tower operations for June, and on June 29th, we had to keep the tower open, and we had to pay for it to keep the tower open an extra hour because NOAA was out flying. And during that 1 hour, we had 32 operations from 10 to 11 p.m. So, you know, we'll hope to get to that point. If we don't, we're well able to cover any of these costs with all the revenue we're going to receive from Amazon, so.
Is it an all or nothing, or is there a chance we could extend, get the contract, the government,
I think
pick it up till 1 a.m. or some, you know, like
If
a
we
push?
are very good at our lobbying efforts, when we go to Washington DC and we can get language in a bill included, so there is specific language or bills that obviously Congress is passing for federal contract towers, and if we got them specifically in there to say that Lakeland needed to be covered, we could get that covered and they'd have to pay for it.
All right. Good question. Any others? Any by the audience at all? This is a voice vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same. Unanimously passes. Item C, sir.
Thank you, sir. The third item is a task authorization with American Acquisition Group for right-of-way acquisition services for the proposed South Wabash Avenue project. The South Wabash Avenue project will extend Wabash Avenue from Ariana Street to Hardin Boulevard. The construction plans of this project are complete. The Army Corps of Engineers permit has been approved, and permits with the Florida Department of Transportation and the Southwest Florida Water Management District are under final review. The required mitigation credits for this project have also been purchased. Purchase of right-of-way is required for this project, and 17 parcels have been identified. American Acquisition Group, one of the city's continuing contract firms, will provide title work services, appraisal services, appraisal review services, negotiation services, and overall project administration for the project. City staff has negotiated a not-to-exceed fee of $402,392 for these services. In 2019, the City Commission approved a budget of $2,500,000 for the right-of-way phase of this project. Only $500,000 was included in the budget approved for FY20. It is now requested that the City Commission approve the appropriation of the remaining $2 million. Finance will administer an internal loan that will be paid back by the Transportation Impact Fee revenue. It is recommended that the City Commission authorize the appropriate city officials to execute a task authorization with American Acquisition Group in the amount of $402,392 and to authorize and increase estimated revenues of $2 million along with a corresponding appropriation of $2 million plus interest and principal of $84,058 in the Transportation Fund. Greg James is with us and available for questions, and that completes my presentation of this item.
All right. Yes, ma'am. Commissioner Madden.
Thank you, Mayor. Do you have the picture, Mr. James, of where the Wabash extension is to show on the?
It's the very last slide on that.
I have it. I just didn't know if the public could see it. I just think it's really important, any chance we can, to show the public what's happening behind the scenes to really mitigate some of the traffic concerns on the Dixieland Road Diet. I know I'm often saying the Dixieland Road Diet is now our neighborhood thoroughfare because we've been working on north-south extensions, for a decade, and are continuing to work on other routes to go now north-south. And a lot of people that I talk to don't even know, that this is in the works. And so I think as many times that we can tell them and kind of point out that that's, from Pipkin, going behind Lakeside Village, going behind Grasslands, all the way to Ariana. And then at the same time, we're also working on that North Wabash extension to give folks on Hardin relief to go to Wabash, and then South Florida go to Hardin. I don't know, I just always like the big picture, and especially when people are frustrated right now with the road diet, they see that there are other things happening, on the grand scheme of things to help us with north-south traffic.
Good afternoon, Greg James, the Assistant Director of Public Works, and thank you, Commissioner Madden. This project is part of a bigger picture. The North Wabash extension actually is in 2 weeks we'll go out for construction bids, and then we'll hopefully be under construction come by October 1st. We have also in that corridor, we're doing improvements to the US 92 at Wabash intersection. That's currently out for bids, and we should be underway with construction probably within the next 45 days, 45 to 60 days, just depending on how quick we can get that back to the Commission for approval. This project we've been working on for quite some time. We've already invested between the study, engineering, construction plans, and then mitigation credits. We're somewhere in the neighborhood of probably about $1.5 million that we've invested in the project. This will get us to the point to where we can, as soon as funding becomes available, we can construct it. We've been following the federal guidelines all the way from the study through design. So in the event that federal money becomes available, we'd be able to be eligible to pursue those funds. But this will take you from Ariana south along the west side of Grasslands, and then take you down the west side of Lakeside Village, under the Polk Parkway where Beaker Boulevard now is located, and then you'll have a tie-in with a new intersection, or a signalized intersection there at Beaker and Hardin Boulevard, there south of the toll road. It's about 7 miles total corridor from I-4 and Kathleen Road to this point south of the Parkway. And so when we get this whole corridor finished, you'll be able to travel that with, I believe the count is only about 4 traffic signals, and which will reduce travel time as well as volumes of traffic that we see on Kathleen Road, Sykes Boulevard, and Hardin Boulevard.
So in that drawing on the bottom left is the village shops, Lakeside Village, in the kind of area that has the 2 white roofs, just so people can get the orientation of this. The CSX Railroad and that little bridge are underneath that in the corner by that FDOT pond. And then the yellow line that goes across is really going east and west at that point in time above Grasslands, which is the golf course that you can see in the housing in between, just for purposes of orientation. So it creates a corridor that none of us ever think about existing in an area that helps move traffic dramatically as we go forward.
Right.
Any other comments from commissioners? Commissioner Reed.
Greg, you've been working on this a long time. Do you anticipate any eminent domain?
There's always that potential. I've only had, I think, 2 projects in my career as far as right-of-way that we did not have to use eminent domain. One was North Wabash. The other was the Edgewood extension. And so we have the firm that worked with me on both those projects is AAG. So my hope is that we could successfully negotiate with all the parties without eminent domain, but we'll be preparing everything in the event that we do have to take that course.
Thank you.
And AAG is the one we're talking about here. Other comments by commissioners? Any comments from the audience or questions? Seeing none, this is a voice vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same. Unanimously passes. Thank you very much, Mr. James. And Mr. Sharowski.
Okay, the 4th item is very scientifically verbose, so I'm going to do the best I can to skip over as many of those difficult words in hopes that Lori Smith will come out and come up and bail me out. The 4th item for presentation is a task authorization with Wood Environment and Infrastructure for Lake Hollingsworth Total Maximum Daily Load Phase 2 Feasibility Study. Lake Hollingsworth does not currently meet FDEP's surface water quality numeric nutrient criteria. Lake Hollingsworth is a TMDL impaired water body that requires a pollutant and load reduction implementation plan for submittal to the FDEP in accordance with the previously submitted and approved City of Lakeland TMDL prioritization plan. The city's Lakes and Stormwater Division requested a scope of services from Wood Environment and Infrastructure Solutions to assist the city in complying with its municipal separate storm sewer system national pollutant discharge elimination system permit requirements pertaining to reductions needed for Lake Hollingsworth. In February 2020, Wood completed a Phase 1 TMDL assessment for the city. It is now the proposed Phase 2 evaluation and feasibility study that will be a continuation of that Phase 1 study and will include the completion of a groundwater seepage study, the completion of an algae community assessment, the completion of a sediment thickness survey and bathymetric survey of the lake bottom, an evaluation of the internal nutrient cycling into the water column, a sediment management feasibility assessment. Funding for the Lake Hollingsworth TMDL Phase 2 feasibility study is provided in the FY20 Stormwater Utility CIP. It is recommended that the City Commission authorize the appropriate city officials to execute the task authorization with Wood Environment and Infrastructure Services out of Tampa, Florida, on behalf of the City of Lakeland, and in the amount not to exceed $149,983.70. Lori is with us for any questions that the Commission may have, and that completes my presentation at this time.
All right, any questions by commissioners on this? And Lori, would you want to augment this at any level? Okay, this is about what the suspension load that's in the water and reducing that in layman's terms, right? And so, thank you very much for purposing through it, though. Is there a motion to approve?
Move for approval.
Motion for approval and a second from Commissioner McCarley. Discussion by commissioners? Any discussion or questions by the audience? A voice vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same. Unanimously passes. Thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, before you move on, just an announcement from the city manager's office. As the commission is aware, I contacted each of you, unfortunately, over the holiday weekend, and I just want to make sure that that our citizens and customers and the public is aware of another attempt that we are seeing by fraudulent individuals who are contacting our customers and are claiming to represent the city of Lakeland in one of our utility platforms. I can tell you that this is, of course, it is a scam. Unfortunately, we had some customers who fell prey to it and did provide some of their financial information. As soon as the city found out about it, we contacted those individuals and advised them they needed to contact their financial institutions as soon as they possibly could. I will tell you that the attempts being made are getting much more technical. A lot of our customers are receiving a robotic automated call, and so that's part of how they fall prey to the scam, is because it seems legitimate that they're hearing from a robot instead of an individual who's just giving them a call. So just please know for the general public that we do not contact active accounts asking for payment immediately by credit card or other means over a phone system. The only time that we contact anyone is when it's an account that has been deactivated and maybe there's a final payment that is owed. But even in that case, there are, I think, 8 very specific methods that we advise folks that they can make payments through one of those processes. So it is another scam. We have contacted the local media. There's been some coverage and certainly on all of our websites and social media platforms. We're doing the best we can to get that word out there. But publicly today, I just wanted to make that announcement so everyone can be aware. Thank you.
Very glad you did. Thank you. That brings us back to City Attorney, and the ordinance is first reading, A1.
Yes, we have one ordinance for first reading. This will be read by title only pursuant to Florida law and come back to the City Commission for a second reading and potential adoption on July 20th. This is proposed ordinance number 20-027, an ordinance relating to zoning, making findings, providing for a change in zoning classification to PUD, Planned Unit Development, zoning to allow limited light industrial and commercial uses in addition to the existing O1 and I1 entitlements on property located at 2050 Edgewood Drive South, providing conditions, finding conformity with the comprehensive plan, providing an effective date. Once again, that will come back to the City Commission on July 20th for final hearing. We have one resolution for consideration and action today. That is proposed resolution number 20-029, a resolution relating to assessments determining the necessity for having cleaned and cleared certain properties within the City of Lakeland, providing for the assessment of liens against such property for expenses incurred in the cleaning and clearing thereof, providing an effective date. And I would just remind you that we removed 1226 Honey Tree Lane, owned by Keith Robinson, from the equalization roll, and that should likewise be removed from this resolution for the purposes of today's action.
So moved.
Second.
And a second from Commissioner McLeod. All right, discussion by commissioners? Any discussion by the audience? This is a roll call vote. Commissioner McCarley.
Aye.
Commissioner Franklin.
Aye.
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 Yes.
Aye. I'm supposed to be last.
Thank you. That's the only resolution, and we have several miscellaneous items for action today. The first is an agreement with Universal Protection Service, LLC, which is doing business as Allied Universal Security Services, LLC. This is our current provider, the city's current provider of security services for various different city facilities. This is a contract that was negotiated pursuant to a state of Florida contract, so we're piggybacking on an actual state of Florida contract for purposes of our needs. The term of this new agreement with Allied is for an initial period of 3 years with 2 additional 1-year renewal options that would only be exercised upon mutual written agreement of the parties. The cost for services, for allied services for the initial 3-year term of the contract is in the amount of $4,077,594.69, and that's recommended for your approval.
Is there a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
And a second?
Second.
Commissioner McLeod. Discussion by commissioners? Any discussion by the audience or comments? This is also roll call. I'm sorry, this is a voice vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Unanimously passes.
Next is a second modification to our construction manager at risk agreement with Wharton Smith. We have contracted with Wharton Smith to be the construction manager for the replacement of the clear well at the T.B. Williams Water Treatment Plant. It's a significant project, and our contract with Wharton Smith actually provides the city the option of directly purchasing materials that are needed for the project from suppliers, and that is what we're doing with this second modification. The city's going to be doing direct purchase of $4,546,404 of materials for the project, and as a result of the city purchases those materials itself, that will reduce the guaranteed maximum price that Wharton Smith could be paid under their agreement with the city by that amount, which would be a reduction from $17,301,164 to $12,754,759. The net effect of that to the city is that because the city is exempt from sales tax, the city will realize a tax savings of $273,184 for the project. Right now, staff is simply just is asking that amount remain appropriated for the project if it's needed for whatever eventuality might occur. We would have that there, but for now we need to at least reduce the guarantee maximum price to be paid to Wharton Smith by the $4,546,404. That's recommended for your approval.
Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Okay, from Commissioner McLeod and a second by Commissioner Franklin. And Mr. Mariucci, since you are in the room, could you give us an update on this project a little bit as well? And just how it's going and the importance of it and its function? And I admire your face mask, sir.
I'm Mariachi Water Utilities. Face mask protects the public, but it protects me if somebody coughs on me or something, I don't get infected in my eyes.
Nice.
You were asking about the Wharton Smith project?
Yes.
Okay, what we're doing with this one is for the tax savings, we will purchase. We're using the city's owner purchase program, and that will save us the tax savings of $273,000. This is a state revolving fund project, so at the end of the project, if we don't find anything on the site that's going to need another change to the guaranteed maximum price, that will lower our payments to the state.
And the project itself, the purpose of the Clearwell
Okay, the purpose of the Clearwell project, there is an existing clear well at the Williams treatment plant. It is ready to fail. So what we're doing is we're constructing a new clear well that will be partitioned, so if it fails in the future, we could bring half of it down, work on it, bring the other half down, and work on it. Right now, we have a single point of failure that's ready to fail, and we're trying to avoid that.
So that's a very important issue that's we need to have in terms of duplicity as a backup. And how many millions of gallons a day roughly out of there?
The plant is designed for 51 million gallons per day. We're doing about 22 million gallons per day right now. Because of the state of the current regulations, we'll never get to 51, but we didn't know that back in the early 80s when the plant went in.
Very good. Any questions by commissioners?
I have one, Mayor.
Yes,
And this has to be an obvious thing that just isn't obvious to me, but it just kind of struck me that we're modifying this, I guess, for the second time, but is it part of our normal process?
Okay.
Every time, wouldn't we try to use our tax-free status before?
Commissioner, you're going to see a little bit more about this project as it continues than you do on most projects. For a design bid build project, we could simply do a change order for something like this. And for a deductive change order for tax savings, you wouldn't see it. This is a construction manager at risk project. The contractor has a right to the guaranteed maximum price. So if we're going to do this for the tax savings, we have to reduce the guaranteed maximum price, so that way the contractor will be entitled to the guaranteed maximum price less the amount per owner purchase. It's a little bit different than a regular construction project.
I think Commissioner Franklin was asking why we wouldn't have built it in the beginning so that it wouldn't have been with sales tax requirement.
We didn't build it in the beginning. We typically don't because we didn't know what was the way it's going to be provided and if we'd actually be able to take advantage of it. Also, the state revolving fund has to approve us doing this.
So we might have been liable for the tax had they not approved that.
Yes.
Any other questions by commissioners? It's a good education time for us, so we appreciate you investing in that knowledge.
Thank you.
Any by the audience at all? Okay, this is a voice vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Also unanimously passes.
The final item for your consideration is the award of 2020-2021 general fund grants to various different nonprofits, as well as for purposes of providing summer recreation programs. You heard a little bit about this with Andy Gibson's presentation earlier in the meeting. There's a list attached to the agenda item that indicates the amounts requested by the different nonprofit agencies, as well as what is being recommended for their funding. And the total amount is $144,215 that would be dispersed under these recommendations. And that is recommended for your approval. I know Andy is still here. Andy,
Yes.
I don't know if you want to throw up the list.
These are the additional 11, right?
Yes, sir. So Annie Gibson, the Planning and Housing Division. Earlier, you guys approved the CDBG funds for public services. So what happened is the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee, they get the 30 applications, get a chance to review all of those, and we receive a total of over $700,000 worth of requests. So we met with a small group of Affordable Housing Advisory Group members, and they kind of purged down that request because we could only do 15% for CDBG, and Finance has said we only have $100,000 to work with from general fund. So we had to kind of narrow that request of $700,000 down to $244,000. So what they did was they made the selection of who the nonprofits would be, and staff pretty much divided the funds up between the nonprofits for $144,000 for CDBG and $100,000 for general fund. So at this time, we need you guys' permission to submit those recommendations for the general 2020-2021 general fund.
Okay, there's a motion to approve.
Thank you. Yes, I make a motion. I have a question as well.
Okay.
Motion.
By Commissioner Reed, and is there a second?
Second.
Okay, a second from Commissioner McLeod. And your question, sir?
Thank you. There again, I appreciate you doing this. This is a task that we used to have to do, and it's a tough situation to go through. Due to the size of this, would you mind reading the successful candidates and the amount of money they got out as we go down the list.
Okay, the size of it. Okay. So, Achievement Academy for CDBG is $15,000 recommended. So you want just the nonprofits that were awarded, correct, or recommended?
Just the ones that we're giving money to from the funded CDBG and the Project Community Service Funds.
Okay. Boys and Girls Club, $10,000 CDBG. Catholic Charities of Central Florida, $7,500. Dream Center, $11,058. Early Childhood Coalition of Polk County, $5,000. Elder Point Ministries of Greater Lakeland, $7,500. Girls Incorporated, $5,000. Homeless Coalition of Polk County, $10,000. Kids Pack, $10,000. Lakeland Volunteer in Madison, $20,000. Lukey Foundation, $5,000. New Life Outreach Ministry, $5,000. Peace River Center, $15,000. Sunrise Community of Polk County, $3,108 from CDBG, $13,900 from General Fund. We have to split one, so that's the easiest. Tabard House, $10,000. Volunteer and Services to the Elderly, $20,000. Wilson House, $10,000. Women's Resource Center of Florida, $5,000. And the various activities for Park and Recreation, $56,107.
Thank you.
Any other questions by commissioners? Or comments? Anybody in the audience? All right, this is also a voice vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Unanimously passes. Thank you for your work on that again.
Mr. Mayor, just one other item. We have at least one item that will need to be advertised for our next meeting, and just would like to know what the format for the next city commission meeting will be for purposes of that advertising. Are we intending to meet in person,
yes,
or virtually?
Yes, sir. In person.
Okay.
Agree? Okay, yes. All right. Oh, and that was it. I'm sorry, I'm waiting for more. We have no report from the finance director, who is, though, in the ably watching in a room nearby. And then we have now the utility items that we already approved on the consent agenda. So that takes us through the balance of the meeting and gives us an opportunity to allow the audience to have some participation if there's anybody in the audience that would like to address the commission. If not, then it is time for members of the City Commission to share thoughts. Who would like to begin? If any. I'll comment on our reopen task force meeting we had this morning. And I say our, I shouldn't say that because it isn't our task force. I should make it clear it's the Chamber of Commerce's task force. But we're working on trying to create some educational tools that come alongside some of the COVID concerns, mask concerns, and other steps that can help people, even in their businesses, know if they get cases of COVID in the business, what do we do now? What are some of the protocols for those things, and have that be a resource. So if you go to the Lakeland Chamber of Commerce website and look at the Reopen Lakeland logo, all those materials are being posted there. So some of them are from healthcare, some of them are from business services, some of them are from the National Chamber Association. And we have a committee in Chris Ann Long and others that are trying to create some tools that you can post on your own sites, as well as that organizations and businesses can use. The intent is that we can help to ramp up the knowledge and education, because sometimes I don't really wonder specifically what do we do now until all of a sudden I have that problem. And then all of a sudden a huge number of antennae go up that we didn't have earlier. And so I'm appreciative of that work, because they're trying to work a little bit in front of us in terms of what's next beyond masks. And the healthcare community communicated with us in that meeting this morning, very, very concerned about what's happening and very grateful for the mandate, which I'm grateful for as well. And so that would be my report on that, and I have nothing else. Anyone else have anything else to share? All right, is there a motion for adjournment? Oh, wait, Commissioner Madden, you do.
I did just want to mention that Tony resent the broadband.
Yes.
Just to make sure we all thought the scoring, looked fine. And I didn't know if any of you had a chance to look at that. If you had any comments, I had also asked Deputy City Manager Schurouse if the IT department had plenty of time to look at the scoring matrix to make sure that they had been a part of that, and they had. They felt really good about what was included. So I don't know if anyone has any other questions or wanted to add anything to that, but I think that's what they were waiting on us.
Okay.
Since we'll be the ones scoring the packets to know whether or not we felt like that needed to be modified. I also wanted to, just check. I didn't get to listen in on, was there a county call today with regard to
There's an agenda study today.
the county numbers?
Oh, sorry.
In cases, I just, I know it's sometimes difficult, like when you read different, I was reading in the State of the Region, that also gives Tampa and Hillsboro's case numbers and capacity at their hospitals. They have actually shut down elective surgeries at 2 of their hospitals, and then 4 Pinellas hospitals have exhausted their ICU bed supply. So I didn't, just having a holiday, I don't want to take my eye off the ball, with regard to hearing from Audrey and from our healthcare. It seems like, in our update today from Audrey, it said ICU bed capacity was at 5.66. Now in the Tampa, region, it said Polk County was 16.2. Now, I wondered if they're including, LRH in the county capacity, or
They are. That's in the county capacity.
Okay, so that would change it a little because we keep it separate.
Right, and we're working on, LRH is working on expanding that capacity at the present time, another 63 units.
Oh, really?
Yes,
Okay.
but
So
it
that'll be
means they have to
118 plus 63?
reallocate a whole different area of the hospital. So they're doing that in anticipation of the need for, which makes it more difficult to do everything that's on the elective side and to house non-COVID patients at the same time. I have a Tampa Bay chart that you may have seen in that report. That if I could push this, place this down, I think helps to illustrate a little bit what gets confusing, and understandably. But if we look, can you see that okay? So if you look at the rising rates, it's not just that the rising rates are occurring. You see the yellow area is the percentage of the positive cases of those tests. And so what we have to recognize is that we are getting hotter faster than we have historically. And tests that are counted in this are only the first time test ever. Because there's a urban myth that every test, every time is counted, and it is not. And so when we're looking at this, we're looking at and you can look at the whole Tampa Bay on the lower area, number of cases that are positive and the rate of which they're growing. That's why we have to be so much more dramatic about this near term. In Florida, we were the second hottest county last weekend in the state. So, any additional comments you want to make?
Yeah, I just think that, it is sort of vacation mode and summer, and we don't meet again for a while. So I just did want to take a moment that we are getting, the commission is getting these reports from our local hospital and healthcare providers. That is the whole reason the mask mandate came onto the table, because they reached out to us. And so they had not reached out to us in 3.5 months of the pandemic. So, there really is, local community spread in Lakeland. It's not relegated to a nursing home. It's not relegated to a particular isolated incident. And so, this is our time. This is Lakeland's time to do some of the things that we've been hearing about, that they've had to do more. They've had to take more precautions in other areas because there's been outbreaks. And now I want people to know it's really in your neighborhood and at your church and in your family and in your groups. I also thought it was interesting, I know that there's HIPAA laws, and a lot of people at the beginning didn't want to really share if they had COVID or not. It was kind of a stigma, and now I think it's just really important because there are going to be young people who it'll be, so easy for, it'll just be a common cold. But it does, I think, reinforce, just like masks kind of tell everyone, remember, we're protecting our neighbors right now. I think it's also powerful when you say, like for me, I'll give one example. My daughter could not have a friend over. She couldn't think of a single friend to have over for her birthday last Monday that either wasn't testing for COVID or COVID positive. So, or quarantined because their family is. So that's a Lakeland, 24-year-old woman. And that group of folks has been out and enjoying everything being open now. But that group also needs to remember that, they might not get as sick, but all those things we've been hearing for 3.5 months, and I know it's sort of like, really, is it really here? But I just would urge you to say, and I think that as people do know it's their neighbor and it's their, friends at church or in their groups or their offices, or like the mayor said, all it takes is, we've been trying to project what we would do at Lakeland Electric if one of our, employees, it gets COVID and then it, spreads and it's your, it's putting on your electricity for your city. And there's a smaller base of folks who have that knowledge base or can do those jobs. It all seems, make-believe until it's your employee or it's you, and then all of a sudden they have to stay home for 5 days because they're waiting on the tests and then 2 weeks of quarantine. And so it is certainly dramatic, for folks who are going to be hit hard and are vulnerable, and that's the worst case scenario. And we're hoping that we're finding those percentages are lower and lower as more testing occurs. That would be a good news. But it is a big disruption, with, whether you like it or not, this is kind of how we're handling this pandemic. And it does, disrupt business and hospitals and, families. And so, I just want to now, I know we think, well, we've had this pandemic for 3.5 months or 4 months, but I really think like for Lakeland, it's the last couple of weeks that it's really been here, where you actually know someone in Lakeland and not just someone in New York City or, another part of the country. So I just want us to all be paying attention and to be careful. And then the last thing I wanted to say is I know that just like when the pandemic started, as a small business owner, I really, was worried about the economic impact, and I mentioned it probably prematurely at that first meeting and got a lot of pushback that, if you don't, if you care about the economy, then you don't care about people's health. And so I realized it was a little too soon to start to, talk about the economy because everyone was grappling with, people maybe dying in New York City. And yet now I think it's easier to talk about that this affects both sides. It affects health and it also affects the economy. And we are smart enough to be able to grapple with both and try to be nimble and flexible and responsive in both sides. I think it's similar with regard to, George Floyd's death, and our immediate response is absolutely to make sure, that we take this opportunity to eradicate racism, and that in our community that we love everyone. And it's really, really special in Lakeland, Florida, to see that in our downtown square, we can welcome everyone now, because we made those strides to move the monument when we could have never known, that this would happen this year. And so I think that as we've looked at the national media on COVID, and now it's special and it's Lakeland now, we got to pay more attention. Same thing when you look at the national media with the Black Lives Matter and with some of the protests. Lakeland, it's important for Lakelanders to say that Lakeland is special. And I think that I was reticent to say anything right away because I certainly want people to be able to express their feelings and their fears and the things that they've suffered, as a person of color. I also now want to just take a moment to really thank our law enforcement officers in Lakeland, Florida. And I really believe that, Commissioner Walker is not here today, but he has been such a strong advocate and a great bridge in his community and with the gang task force and with just the pastors in Lakeland, Florida, who who have had such a response of love and forgiveness and inclusion and prayer vigils, as opposed to tearing down businesses or doing things that hurt our local small businesses with rioting. So I just am really proud. I know that we always have work to do. So, it's difficult to say it without saying, it's like I have 6 kids. I love them all. And I don't want it, when I'm saying I love one, to mean that doesn't I don't love the other one. And I guess that's what I'm trying to say today is that I love diversity. I think it's in our mission statement as a city that we want to be inclusive. And we're going to use the listening session that we had last Monday to spring us forward and even make better strides in that regard. But at the same time, I don't want our officers to feel overburdened or hopeless, that they're not recognized, that they have gone above and beyond to try to be inclusive and to try to be kind and to implement some things so that they don't have as many problems with police brutality as some of our other cities in the country have. So I'm just making an appeal to all, as we love everyone, I just want to include our law enforcement and to thank them for all they do to keep us safe, and so that they'll feel hopeful that they'll continue to not only be loving and kind and embracing all people in Lakeland. They won't feel like, great, everyone thinks that we're part of the problem, and they're seeing on TV that, they're maybe villainized, and I certainly wouldn't want them to feel villainized from us. So I just wanted to take a minute to kind of bring that up today.
I met with both of our morning briefing and evening briefing police to be able to represent us in that, and that very support, so that they know that we're there, and to emphasize too how important it is that we're making sure we're interfacing in the right way, as we go alongside, because that's a part of this process. And so I hope that they're getting that message, but I think we'll see that over time. And again, we're going to coalesce the meetings that we're having. There's some more being done tonight. There's another call to consciousness tonight, and there's I think 3 NAACP meetings that are coming up that are going to be more discussions, and all of that is to continue this dialogue and make sure we don't lose the opportunity to provide the right kind of momentum without having people thinking on either end we're trying to overreact. We're just trying to find the gaps that we can fill and figure out the best ways to raise up opportunities that we haven't done before. And we can do more, and it can be done without having to spend money. This can be done really because of implementation and connection and networking. So, not that we wouldn't have to spend some money, but I think there's lots of ways to approach that. That's far less the issue than it is the ability to connect people. And that's the hard part. And we can do it. And that is because we're a unique city. Commissioner McLeod.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for your leadership in the forum last week, and Commissioner Walker as well, and just your willingness to wade into difficult issues and to listen and to work towards solutions. That was very evident from our vantage point, I think, last Monday night. I appreciate you reporting out on the Reopen Lakeland Task Force, because I think it's important for people to remember that group is still meeting. Are you meeting once a week? Is that?
Every 2 weeks.
Okay.
Yes.
And there's just a lot of great work. In addition to what the commission is doing, you have the healthcare community, the business community, and leaders and voices that are trying to figure out how to manage the crisis. It's a moving target, and so that's always encouraging to me. So I appreciate you coming back and sharing with us, sharing with the community what's being done.
Thank you. Anything else? Is there a motion to adjourn? I see it from Commissioner Reed and a second by Commissioner Madden. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same. We are adjourned. Thank you very much.